Lexie Hull's decision to leave the Indiana Fever stunned fans, but it made perfect sense to those paying attention. Her exit wasn't just about minutes on the court or a fresh start elsewhere. It was a clear rejection of a franchise riddled with instability, mismanagement, and uncertainty. Hull's presence embodied everything the Fever desperately need: grit, unity, and emotional steadiness. When Caitlin Clark broke down while honoring her, it wasn't just grief, it was frustration. One of her few constants was gone, and what remains is a fractured system barely holding together.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
For Clark, Hull's departure is more than personal, it's structural. She's now tasked with filling a void that management either ignored or created. As she steps further into the spotlight, the pressure to lead without support becomes heavier. Hull's move to Unrivaled, a player-driven league, only sharpens the contrast between what players want and what franchises like Indiana can offer. If the Fever don't evolve fast, they won't just lose chemistry. They'll lose the very stars they rely on to survive. Caitlin Clark didn't say much. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. The moment Lexie Hull's departure from the Indiana Fever became official, it hit fans hard, but it hit Clark even harder. This wasn't just a roster move. This was personal. For Clark, Hull wasn't just a teammate. She was her person, her rock, the one player who helped her stay grounded through one of the most pressure-packed rookie seasons in WNBA history. Now she's gone, and the impact is being felt across the entire franchise. Lexie Hull leaving didn't just pull at the heartstrings of fans. It exposed the internal cracks within the Indiana Fever and highlighted bigger issues across the league. Her exit wasn't dramatic. It wasn't messy, but it was powerful. Because for a player like Hull, who showed up every day with quiet toughness, unwavering focus, and an unselfish heart, walking away doesn't come easily. She didn't leave because she gave up. She left because she wanted more control, more clarity, more respect. And when those things weren't available in Indiana, she found them elsewhere, specifically in Unrivaled, a new player-driven off-season league that's offering something the WNBA, and the Fever in particular, have struggled to provide: stability. Lexie Hull's departure is more than a loss in the lineup. It's a loss of identity. She wasn't flashy. She didn't need to be. Her value came from everything that doesn't show up in a box score: the defense, the hustle, the energy on the bench, the way she pulled teammates aside after a bad quarter, the way she celebrated other players' success like it was her own. That's the kind of leadership you don't teach, you feel it. And Caitlin Clark felt it most. Clark's tribute to Hull was raw and direct. She called her the soul of the locker room. And that line stuck, because it wasn't just emotional, it was accurate. Hull's departure wasn't just the loss of a defender or a rotation piece. It was the loss of someone who held the emotional weight of the team when others couldn't, who protected the culture, who made the hard days a little lighter. Now, all of that responsibility lands squarely on Clark. She's already the face of the team. She's the reason the seats are filled. She's the headline every night. And now, without Hull, she's also the one being looked at to lead, not just in scoring, but in setting the tone, building chemistry, and keeping the locker room from splintering under pressure. And let's be real, that's a lot for anyone, let alone a rookie. The Fever were already unstable. Injuries, lineup changes, confusing rotations, and a general sense that no one in management had a long-term plan. Hull was one of the few constants, a voice of calm in the storm. And now the calm is gone. Clark's going to have to do more than adjust. She's going to have to carry. That means more than points. It means emotional resilience, vocal leadership, and trust building, fast. And here's where it gets even more difficult. Clark doesn't just have to fill that role. She has to do it while wondering what comes next for the franchise she's tied herself to. Because if the Fever couldn't keep someone like Lexie Hull, who embodied loyalty, effort, and chemistry, who exactly can they keep? That's the question fans are now asking. And they should be. This isn't just one player moving on. It's the latest in a series of signals that the Indiana Fever are struggling to build a cohesive, sustainable team environment. the kind of environment where players want to stay, not escape from. And Hull's decision to leave for unrivaled adds another layer to this story. She didn't retire. She didn't disappear. She chose a new league, a player-run, player-focused alternative. That move says everything about where things stand. There's frustration building across the league. Players are tired of unstable roles, tired of questionable management decisions, tired of feeling like they're just pieces in someone else's puzzle. The looming threat of a lockout hasn't helped, and Hull's exit is just one more example of players looking for more control in a system that rarely gives it to them. Clark's now caught in the middle of all of this. She's no longer just a promising rookie. She's the one left behind to navigate the mess. She'll be expected to lead, to unite, to inspire. But she'll have to do it in a locker room, missing its emotional heartbeat. And with fans now questioning whether the organization can hold itself together, let alone support the franchise player they're banking on. Leadership doesn't happen in a vacuum. It grows from support, from trust, from knowing the people around you have your back. Hull was that for Clark. And without her, the process of becoming a true leader becomes 10 times harder. But it's also an opportunity. A painful one, but a defining one. Because if Clark can weather this storm, if she can fill that leadership vacuum, rebuild chemistry, and help keep the team together, she'll emerge stronger. Not just as a player, but as the kind of leader you can build around for years. But let's be honest, she shouldn't have to do it alone. This should be the wake-up call the Fever's front office needed. You don't just replace a player like Hull. You earn the right to keep players like her. And if you lose them, it means something's broken. Hull didn't leave because she couldn't play. She left because the environment stopped making sense. That's what should concern Indiana. Not just the departure, but what led to it. The culture, the communication, the chaos. Clark's tribute wasn't just heartfelt. It was a red flag. Because when your franchise player is publicly grieving the loss of a teammate like this, you'd better be paying attention. The Fever are now officially on the clock. Fix the chemistry. Support your leaders. And start building a culture that players want to be part of before this isn't just Lexie Hull leaving. Before more players start to question what they're doing here. Because the heartbreak of one farewell might be manageable, but the fallout of repeated exits? That's how franchises collapse. Fans are already talking. They're disappointed. They're confused. They're hurt. They watched a player who gave her all walk out the door, and the silence from leadership since then has been deafening. The Fever need more than a press release. They need to show, with actions, that they understand what just happened, that they understand the emotional cost, that they understand the stakes. Because Caitlin Clark is still here. She's still giving everything she has. But the cracks are showing. And if something doesn't change soon, she won't be able to hold it all up by herself. Lexie Hull walked away for her own peace. Clark now has to decide if she can find hers in the middle of all this. So what comes next? That's the question hanging over the franchise. Will this moment push Clark to rise into a new kind of leader? Or will the instability keep chipping away at everything they've tried to build? That's on the Fever now, and the clock is ticking. Let us know in the comments. How do you think this will impact Caitlin Clark moving forward? Can the Fever recover from this loss? Or is this a deeper problem the team hasn't addressed? Make sure to subscribe, because if this is just the beginning of something bigger, you won't want to miss what happens next. The grief from Lexie Hull's departure is still sinking in. It's not the kind of loss that fades after a few games. It's the kind that lingers in quiet moments, in the empty locker after practice, in the missed high fives, in the leadership void that no one has quite stepped into. Because when someone like Lexie leaves, the absence doesn't just echo. It haunts. Caitlin Clark is now left standing in that echo. And it's deafening. She didn't come into the league expecting things to be easy. She knew the WNBA was competitive, physical, and political. But what she probably didn't expect was how quickly everything would start shifting beneath her feet. What should have been a season of growth and excitement has turned into a trial by fire. And Lexie Hull's departure? That was the emotional breaking point. Because when your most trusted teammate, the one who understood the mess and still showed up every day, decides she's done, that shakes you. It makes you question everything. Who's really got your back? Who's really listening? Who's building something real here? and who's just holding it together with tape and hope. Lexie was holding it together, quietly, relentlessly. She was the person who filled in the emotional gaps that management either couldn't see or didn't know how to fix. She played defense on the court, but off it, she was the protector of morale, of accountability, of chemistry. And when someone like that leaves, it's not just a subtraction. It's a collapse in support. Now Clark is being asked to lead a locker room she's still getting to know, without the person who helped her understand it in the first place. That's not a development arc. That's a pressure cooker. And what makes it worse is that this could have been avoided. The warning signs were there. The franchise has been drifting. Unclear rotations. Inconsistent messaging. A management team that seems more reactive than proactive. Hull didn't leave because she stopped believing in her teammates. She left because she stopped believing in the system. That's a dangerous message to send, especially to your franchise player. Because now Clark is watching all of this unfold in real time. She's seeing what happens when players feel disrespected, undervalued, and ignored. She's seeing what happens when an organization doesn't protect its culture. And even if she won't say it publicly, she's asking herself a very real question. Can I trust this place to have my back? Right now, the answer isn't clear. Hull's decision to move to Unrivaled didn't just sting. It exposed something deeper. She wasn't chasing a bigger market. She wasn't asking for more minutes. She was asking for stability, for transparency, for control over her own career. And when she couldn't get that in Indiana or in the WNBA, she walked away. That move resonates far beyond just one team. It's a reflection of a larger shift happening across women's basketball. Players are done waiting. They're creating their own opportunities. They're demanding to be seen, not just as athletes, but as people who deserve respect, consistency, and investment. And Caitlin Clark is now in the middle of that storm. She's the one fans are looking to, the one media won't stop talking about, the one everyone expects to step up, stay loyal, and somehow fix what's broken, all while still performing at the highest level every night. That's an impossible burden, especially without her closest ally by her side. And the fans feel it. That's what made Clark's farewell to Hull so gut-wrenching. It wasn't performative. It wasn't calculated. It was raw. She meant every word when she said Hull was the soul of the locker room. You don't fake that. That kind of grief only exists when someone mattered deeply. And that's what makes this so frustrating for fans, because it didn't have to be this way. Lexie Hull wasn't a liability. She wasn't a bench warmer. She was glue. She was culture. She was everything franchises say they want when they talk about building a winning identity. But when the time came to protect that identity, to support the player who was quietly holding it all together, the fever let her go. Or worse, they let her feel like she had to go. That's the part that's hard to swallow. Because if Lexie Hull can be lost that easily, who's next? Caitlin Clark? That's not drama. That's reality. Stars don't stay where the foundation feels unstable. They don't sacrifice prime years of their career hoping management will eventually get it right. They leave, and they don't look back. The Fever should be doing everything in their power to prevent that. But right now, they're on the clock. And if they don't start making real changes off the court, behind the scenes, they'll lose more than just locker room chemistry. They'll lose the trust of the one player they can't afford to disappoint. Clark's leadership journey has now been accelerated in the most brutal way possible. What should have been a steady evolution has become a trial, a test of not just her skill, but her emotional capacity to carry a team that's leaning on her in ways they haven't earned. She didn't sign up to be the team therapist, or the culture architect, or the bridge between players and management. But here she is, grieving her teammate while also being expected to step up and lead without missing a beat. And that's the part fans are beginning to question. How much is too much? At what point does the pressure become unfair? At what point does the organization start doing more than just leaning on Clark's leadership and start actually supporting it? Because she can't do this alone. Lexie Hull knew that. That's why she played the way she did. That's why she showed up every day and gave everything she had to the team. She believed in the potential of the players, of the fans, of the future. But belief only goes so far when the environment keeps falling short. And now Clark is left with a choice. Does she keep investing her full self into a franchise that's yet to prove it deserves her? Or does she start protecting her peace the way Lexie did? It's a question that no rookie should have to ask. But this is the state of the Indiana Fever. Unstable, uncertain, and, as of now, unfinished. This next stretch of the season isn't just about wins. It's about watching how Clark responds, how she adjusts to the leadership vacuum, how she decides to carry herself in the wake of a loss that clearly shook her. But even more than that, it's about how the franchise responds. Do they step up and create the support she needs? Or do they watch another foundational piece slip away? Because this moment isn't just about Lexie Hull walking out the door. It's about everything that led up to that door opening. It's about the silence, the missed opportunities, the culture that allowed someone so essential to feel so expendable. And if they're not careful, this won't be the end of the heartbreak. It'll just be the beginning. There's no getting around it. Lexie Hull leaving broke something. And not just in the locker room, not just in the game plan. It broke the trust that so many fans and players were barely holding on to. The kind of fragile belief that this team, this franchise, maybe had finally turned a corner with Caitlin Clark. That with her arrival, the Indiana Fever would become more than just a rebuilding project. That they'd become a team with identity, purpose, and heart. But heart is exactly what walked out that door with Hull. Her game wasn't about big scoring nights. She wasn't the headline, but she was the foundation. The kind of player who didn't need attention to lead. She gave the team balance, grounded the highs, and softened the lows. She kept the culture intact when the scoreboard didn't. And now, the balance is off. The culture feels fractured. And the scoreboard? Still inconsistent. Lexie Hull was the kind of player you keep, even if she doesn't lead the stat sheet. Especially because she doesn't. Because every championship team has one. The one who fills the emotional gaps. The one who says what needs to be said when the cameras aren't rolling. The one who puts out the fire before it becomes public. She was that person for Clark. And now, Clark is left with a team that feels a little colder, a little quieter, and a lot more uncertain. Clark didn't just lose a teammate. She lost the one person who seemed to understand the weight she was carrying and helped her carry it. Because while everyone else saw Caitlin as the rookie phenom, the ratings driver, the league's newest golden ticket, Lexie saw the human underneath all of that noise. The one trying to lead before she was fully ready. The one trying to navigate a franchise that didn't quite know what to do with its own spotlight. And when Lexie walked away, it wasn't just about her own future. It was a silent indictment of the way the Fever are being run. A message without a press conference. She didn't have to say the words. Her decision was the statement. It said, "I'm not waiting around for this to get better." And that's exactly the kind of sentence that should keep Fever leadership up at night. Because if Hull, dependable, loyal, level-headed Hull, felt like things were too unstable to stay, what do they expect Clark to feel right now? This isn't just a warning sign. This is an alarm going off. And still, the front office has stayed relatively quiet. No major response. No visible urgency. No real signal to the fans, or Clark, that they understand the gravity of what's been lost. They can't afford to be passive. Not with the foundation cracking. Not with their star player left to hold the pieces together. Clark may be mature beyond her years, but she's not invincible. And she shouldn't have to be. She deserves to be part of a structure that protects her leadership, not one that exploits it for marketing while ignoring what's happening internally. Because here's the truth. Without Lexie Hull, the margin for error is gone. The locker room can't afford miscommunication. The coaching staff can't afford another stretch of confusion. And the players? They can't afford to lose each other. Not emotionally, not mentally, not again. That's the thing about culture. It takes years to build and moments to break. And the Fever, for all their hype and hope, haven't built anything steady enough to survive more losses like this. So now all eyes are on Clark. Not because anyone doubts her, but because the entire narrative of this franchise has now shifted again. The girl who is supposed to be the future now has to fix the present. The one who was supposed to learn how to lead now has to be the leader. Not in theory, not in preseason media day interviews, but right now, in the middle of emotional chaos. It's not fair, but it's real. And the way she handles it might define the rest of her time in Indiana. Will she step into that vacuum and try to hold the team together herself? Or will she start asking the same questions Lexie Hull clearly did? Because if management doesn't step up and start taking accountability, publicly and privately, there's no guarantee this ends with Clark choosing to stay long-term. That's the part people don't want to talk about. But it's there, hanging over the team like a storm cloud. This franchise has been gifted one of the most influential athletes in modern women's sports. And the clock on that gift is ticking. The league is watching. The fans are watching. The players are watching. And right now, it doesn't look like Indiana is doing enough to keep her. They've already let go of the teammate who meant the most to her, who shielded her, who made the locker room feel like a safe space when everything outside it felt chaotic. Now, they need to prove they won't keep making the same mistakes. They need to show Caitlin Clark and every player watching that they value more than ticket sales, that they value culture, people, loyalty, stability. Because without those things, you don't have a franchise. You have a slow collapse. Lexie Hull made the hard decision first. She chose herself. She chose peace. She chose an environment that offered what the WNBA and the Fever didn't: control and respect. Now the question becomes, will Caitlin Clark do the same? Or will this be the moment she decides to double down and lead anyway, to try and rebuild what just fell apart? Either way, the clock is ticking, and the Fever better start listening. Because fans don't forget when players they love are pushed out, and stars don't stick around when the environment they were promised never materializes. Let us know in the comments. Should Clark stay the course and take the reins, or start thinking long-term about her own future? And don't forget to subscribe, because where the story goes next could change everything.